there. Okay, so we are moving on to chapter 3. So in class, we are going to be working on the outline for this chapter. So you should be watching these after we have gone through them in class. Alrighty, so we are going to start with, as soon as I get this to advance, all right, there we go. Kind of expansion in the colonies and whatnot. All right, so 1660 to 1685, we have Charles II in charge over in England. This is following the restoration of the monarchy. England is looking for more control over its colonies. All right, so you're going to see a lot of things changing here. So first off, in the Carolinas, these are proprietorships. So land in this region is owned by aristocrats. All right, so these men, they could rule as they wanted to as long as they were following English law. You do have the fundamental constitutions of Carolina from 1669, which is going to call for a manorial system. So basically this is serfs and nobles, which is the way it has been in Europe for a very long time. First North Carolina or North Carolinian settlers were poor families and runaway servants from Virginia, and the English Quakers are there as well. South Carolina, you have white settlers arriving from Barbados, and they are working to create a hierarchical society with enslaved African and Indian workers. So you'll start to get the kind of southern hierarchy at this point. William Penn, and he looks like a Quaker. So remember Quaker oatmeal has a Quaker on it. Pennsylvania, William Penn. 15,000 plus settlers in 17th century or in the 17th century are in Pennsylvania. So the Quakers kind of believed in equality across the board. So they have really good relationships with the native peoples, and this is going to allow them to prosper. The colony was given to William Penn as payment for a debt. He envisioned it as a refuge for his fellow Quakers who were persecuted in England for both tax and military resistance. So the doctrine is based on the inner light, or grace of understanding in men and women. So they are the first ones to come over here with gender equality. Penn's frame of government in 1681 linked the teachings of Quakerism to the politics of the colony. So they don't have a state church. So unlike Massachusetts with the Puritans and whatnot, they don't have a state church. And this is actually one of the first colonies that's going to really separate state and church. So there is political equality for all who owned property. They did not have to be a Quaker. It is very ethnically diverse as a result of Penn's encouragement of religious tolerance. And when we talk ethnically diverse, we are talking different kinds of Europeans really at this point in time. So not necessarily that we have black people or Africans or anything like that as far as consideration of the ethnically diverse. So it is true ethnicity where they come from. All right. So 1651, you're going to get the Navigation Acts. And these are going to exclude the Dutch and the French vessels by declaring ships that carried material goods from the colonies. So basically they're saying they must be owned by the English or the colonists. You could not have Dutch and French ships coming into English channels and ports. Additional acts in 1660 and 1663 required that sugar and tobacco be exported only to England. So it would have to go from Barbados, for instance, and ship over to England, and then England would ship it back over to the colonies. So kind of ridiculous, but that is how they kept control of it and how they made money. Policies were backed by the English Navy, who forcibly drove the Dutch out of the Atlantic. Colonists were kind of ignoring these mercantilist laws and maintaining trade relations with the Dutch, because anytime you tell somebody they can't have something, it is going to cause a black market of some sort. The English are going to crack down on the colonies by denying the Massachusetts Bay claim to New Hampshire. In 1684, the Massachusetts Bay Charter was annulled as punishment, and they take it over as a royal colony. And they create the Dominion of New England. So King James II was an aggressive and inflexible ruler. So James I is Mary, Queen of Scots' son, Elizabeth's cousin. He takes over, but this is James II. Totally different guy. All right. In 1686, the charters of Connecticut and Rhode Island were revoked, and they merged with Massachusetts Bay and Plymouth to form the Dominion of New England. So it all becomes one big colony. New Jersey and New York were added in 1688, so now you've got a huge colony. He put a former military officer named Andros in charge of New England. And this guy's going to ban town meetings from New England and advocates public worship in the Church of England. So keep in mind, we're talking Massachusetts Bay with the Puritan, Plymouth with the Pilgrims, New York, who had Dutch people there, various religions, New Jersey. They all had different religions, and they're going to ban all religions except for Church of England, which obviously is going to offend the Puritans. Andros also invalidated all land grants granted by the original Massachusetts Bay Charter. He offers to provide new deeds, but only if the colonists would pay him an annual fee. So as you can imagine, this is not going to go over well. All right, this is William Penn's treaty with the Indians in 1771. So like I said, William Penn and the Pennsylvania people, the Quakers, had a very good relationship with the natives. All right, so as you might can imagine, James II's whole little thing is not going to go over well for very long. 1688, James's Spanish Catholic wife is going to give birth to a son. Protestant bishops and parliamentary leaders in the Whig Party fear a return of Catholicism. So when his Catholic wife gives birth to a son, the people of England are concerned that this son will try to change the religion of England back to Catholicism. King James II is overthrown as an event that's dubbed the Glorious Revolution. James does have a Protestant daughter named Mary Stuart, and she becomes a queen along with her husband, William. So William and Mary, and you've got William and Mary University and a lot of things named after these two. So they are definitely going to make some changes. Whig politicians are going to force King William and Queen Mary to accept a Declaration of Rights, creating a constitutional monarchy with a powerful House of Commons and a weak monarchy. So this is really going to add to what the Magna Carta already says. So this is going to add to it, and it's going to decrease the power of the monarchy. You have Protestant colonists in Massachusetts, Maryland, and New York who are going to rebel this Dominion of New England. Puritan leaders are going to accuse Andros of Catholic sympathy, and they are going to ship him back to England. William and Mary are going to break up the Dominion of New England, and they are going to create a new royal colony with both Maine and Plymouth. The new charter is going to give the vote to all male property owners regardless of faith. Rebellions are going to occur in Maryland and New York. And the Glorious Revolution begins a non-authoritarian era to the colonies and allows restoration of self-government in Massachusetts and New York. And so, although this sounds great, this will eventually lead to what happens much later in the 18th century when we start fighting for independence and creating our own country. All right, moving on to Native people. As imperial conflicts come to North America, Native Americans are going to adapt to the demands imposed upon them by European settlers. So in that, they really don't have a choice. The European settlers have advanced technologies that the natives don't have. There is continuous land westward, and the Europeans are going to just keep pushing them. You have some new tribes like the Catawbas. Anyway, they come together from remnants of formerly large groups. Other nations like the Iroquois are going to decline in numbers, but sustain themselves by adopting war captives. So they take people captive and make them Iroquois. All right, they formed fragmented communities coming together into new coherent tribes. You get the Creek Indians, and this is going to try and allow them to deal more effectively with the European neighbors. Imperial wars are going to threaten Native Americans, but also give them newfound leverage. The Iroquois are going to devise a new strategy for playing French and English interests off of one another. 1701, they make alliances with both empires, declaring their intention to remain neutral. The covenant chain soon becomes a model for relations between the British Empire and Native American people in general. All right. Let's see. The Creeks. So again, the Creeks is just a group of several native tribes that come together. They want to become the dominant tribe in the southeast. They're going to destroy Franciscan missions in Florida. And those are all coming from the Spanish settlers. They attacked Spanish settlement at Pensacola, and they captured 1,000 Appalachians, whom they sold to South Carolina slave traders for sale in the West Indies. 1715, when English settlers demand payment for trade debts, the Creeks and the Yamasees revolted, killing 400 colonists before being overwhelmed by the Carolinians and their new Indian allies, the Cherokees. All right, and the Cherokees are going to remain in that area for close to 100 years until Andrew Jackson comes in and starts moving them westward on the Trail of Tears. The Mohawks and Abenakis. I'm going to just apologize. I probably have apologized already. I am the worst with these Indian names. I am sure they are pronounced differently, many of them, but I'm going to do the best I can, and nobody's going to ask you to repeat them out loud. All right, so they received French aid, and they turned against their Puritan enemies. 1704, they attacked the English settlements in Maine. They killed 48, and they captured 112 residents of Deerfield, Massachusetts. In 1710, the New England militia is going to join with the British naval forces to seize Port Royal in French Acadia, but they are going to fail miserably in attack against the French stronghold at Quebec. So this is where we're going to stop with the Native peoples for right now. We're going to move into slavery in the next section. Just keep in mind, I mean, from the day that Europeans get here, there are problems that they create with the natives. Their advanced technology, the diseases that they bring, these things are all going to cause a lot of problems for the native populations. And this is going to continue for well into the 19th century. And even today, things are not great with native populations as far as the reservations that they live on. They're very poor. Their education's not great because they don't have, it's just been this series of kind of beating them down and beating them down and beating them down over years and years. So, all right, so that's where we're going to stop here, and your next, the next one will cover the slave economy. All righty, have a good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever.